I'm Nick Westergaard, and this is On Brand, helping you tell your story. My guest this week is Jane McCarthy.
I love to look for mentor brands in any category that share an essential ethos that I think my brand shares. We don't want to get too caught up in our category. I think sometimes we have blinders on. If you can hook into your archetype, look at other brands that play in that space for inspiration.
Jane McCarthy works with companies to define their foundational brand strategy. Collaborating with entrepreneurs and marketing teams, she helps clarify a brand's essential archetype, core motivation, and intended customer impact. Bringing her 15 years of advertising experience to the table, she inspires strategic brand blueprints that are both authentic to who companies really are, as well as ultra-compelling to customers. Along with her sister and business partner, Kate McAndrew, Jane is co-author of the new book, The Goddess Guide to Branding, your blueprint for building an abundant and authentic feminine brand. My interview with Jane McCarthy is coming right up. But first,
my dad works in B2B marketing, but I never really knew what that meant. Then one day my dad came by my school for career day and told everyone in my class he was a big ROAS man. Then he just kept saying things like, the bigger the ROAS, the better, over and over. My friends still laugh at me to this day. I think it means calculating a return on ad spend. One thing's for sure. I'll be known as the ROAS man's kid for the rest of my days. Why couldn't you just be a fireman or a lawyer? Why? You ruined my life, Dad.
Not everyone gets B2B, but LinkedIn has the people who do. And with ads on LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people based on job title, industry, likelihood to buy, and more. Start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Hi, I'm Jason Falls, the executive producer of the Marketing Podcast Network. As you probably know, Asheville and western North Carolina were nearly destroyed by Hurricane Helene in late September. The Red Cross has deemed this a Category 7 disaster, which is the largest category they give. One of our member podcasters, Patrick Casale, is on the front lines there. He's an Asheville native who is living through and witnessing the trauma, destruction, and recovery his family, friends, and fellow community members are going through. Patrick started a GoFundMe campaign to raise money for relief efforts. All donations through Patrick's fundraiser go to local nonprofits who are helping with supply runs. Donations there directly impact people in need. I've given to the fund personally. Patrick has given as well, despite the fact he's having to recover too. The Marketing Podcast Network wants to help, and we know you do too. Visit Patrick's campaign at bit.ly/WNC help. The abbreviation is for Western North Carolina, WNC. bit.ly/WNC help. Any amount goes a long way. Even just $5 can provide a few gallons of clean drinking water to a family in need. Please join us in helping the relief and recovery efforts in Asheville and western North Carolina. Go to bit.ly/WNC help today and contribute. That's bit.ly/WNC help. The full URL, bit.ly/WNC help. Donate what you can. Every dollar helps.
Jane McCarthy, welcome to On Brand.
Hi, Nick. I'm so happy to be here.
I am happy to have you here, and I feel like my fairly obvious question as we embark on this conversation is, when you write a book called The Goddess Guide to Branding, is it a dumb first question to say, who is this book for?
Well, I think that's a perfect question because as we know in branding, we want to think about who we're trying to reach in order to properly connect. And I actually thought a lot about who I wanted this book, that when I started thinking about writing a book, I thought about who I should target or reach because I had spent a career focused on serving very large companies and marketing professionals who often had an MBA and had years of experience in this as a profession. And what I discovered when I thought a lot about who do I want to help the most with my book, I realized that as much as I love marketing professionals, I felt there's really a need to help entrepreneurs and small business owners who maybe don't have this background, haven't gone to business school, but they have a small business and they need to reach people in their community. And they have a great service and they need to know some of the skills that we know as marketing professionals in order to craft a compelling set of communications and create a brand experience that will resonate with people. So I decided to make this a book for entrepreneurs and particularly women with businesses that are just starting, or perhaps they have a small business or a medium-sized business and they need to get to the next level. So that's who the book is really for.
I love that, and not just because you said that I did not ask a dumb question, which I always appreciate. But you talk about women entrepreneurs, and several are profiled in the book, including a recent on-brand guest, Sali Christeson of Argent. And talk to me about the lessons that you learned in researching the book from some of these entrepreneurs like Sali and others.
So I have a master's in business myself. And as you mentioned, I had over a decade of experience in advertising. But I really feel like I got my PhD while I wrote this book. This is my PhD thesis, because I learned so much from the women who we interviewed in this book, including Sali Christeson. And one thing that I discovered is it was just almost a reaffirmation of how creative individuals really are and how powerful we can be when we work in a team, even if we aren't a creative director at Ogilvy or the head strategist at Wyden Kennedy. What I discovered was the ingenuity of women who had really various backgrounds in creating their brands themselves, getting something off the ground that was meaningful for people without a ton of money in the bank. Without hundreds of thousands of dollars that they could put toward a branding agency. One of my favorite stories in the book is from Laura Modi, who is the co-founder of Baby, which is a infant formula company that has an organic set of ingredients. And prior to starting Baby, Laura Modi had struggled to feed her own baby. And felt really guilty about that. And when she went to the food aisle in the grocery store, she looked at the ingredient list on these products and was shocked and knew that there was a better way. And that was her defining moment where she set the course for her life, which would be to deliver a better formula for mothers. And Laura talks about the story in the book when we interviewed her. She had gone to New York at the start of building the company and met with a branding agency that had shared some, aesthetic directions for the brand, for the Baby brand. And on the plane back, she was talking with her associate, and they said, "This isn't resonating." And they just started sketching things out on the plane. And on the plane, they found a line drawing of a cow. They ordered it on the plane, and then they had their logo. And so I think what I learned is just when you're so passionate about an idea, creative concepts can just bubble up. And so again, it was just so inspirational to encounter these women who all went around making their brand in a different way. And there is no one way to do it. But if you have a tremendous passion, I think that's fuel for great creative ideas in your brand.
I think what you said in there that was really powerful, talking about, obviously your formal education background, but really learning through these examples, through these stories of others, certainly has great power. As you kind of synthesized all of this, all of the learnings from Sali, Laura, others. I wonder what sort of methodology it led you to for the Goddess Guide.
Yes. So, my background in building brands as a strategist, I've explored so many different tools for getting to a compelling brand identity or a core brand ethos. The one that I just always resonated with, and it always seemed like a magic key into understanding the heart of a brand, is finding an archetype. And so in the book, we introduce the reader to 8 archetypes, in this case, archetypal goddesses. And, archetypes are characters. If you think about Hollywood movies, there's the clown of comedy, there's the outlaw of westerns, there's the hero of action films. And I was interested to look at characters through the lens of the feminine and powerful feminine archetypes, and which led me to the goddess. And so I think if you can find your essential character that has common traits to all of humanity. We can resonate with the outlaw. We all have a rebellious streak in us. We can resonate with the hero because we all want to be heroic in our own way. We can resonate with the comic because we all need a bit of humor in our lives. And so I think when you understand what character you want to play as a brand, this is like a magic key that unlocks so much authentic humanity and personality that can really resonate with customers. So that's where I start when I lead readers and entrepreneurs on the journey of crafting their brand, is finding, in our case, your goddess, or finding your core archetype. And then from there, the second step is what I call finding your heart. And that is identifying why you exist in the world and the passion that really drives you. So most of us are familiar with Simon Sinek and his watershed idea of crystallizing your why, your central motivation for, at the heart, like, why are you doing this every day? Why does it matter that you show up in the world? Why do people need your product? Why are you here? And so, and that needs to be heartfelt and felt as a genuine passion within your company. So that's the second step, is finding your heart. And then this third step is finding your gift. And by gift, I don't mean the physical present with a bow attached, but rather that emotional impact you're going to make on people. How do you want people to feel after they've had an experience with your brand? Whether they've walked through your store, or they've experienced a clip you have on Instagram, or they've seen your product on shelf. What is that emotional impact you want to have? I can think of that as the gift, because we always want to leave people better than when they first arrived at an experience we're providing. So how are we making their lives a little bit better? And once we know our goddess or our archetype, once we know our heart, once we know our gift, how does that translate then into style? And that's step 4. Style is really how you live your brand identity in the world, how you express yourself, and how you deliver on that personality of the brand, that essential meaning of the brand, that heart, and how you deliver on the gift, how you make that impact. And so style is as much about how you walk as it is about how you talk. And so those are the 4 key steps that we walk through in our branding method to get you to that essential brand blueprint.
On Brand, we'll be right back after this.
This episode is brought to you by Global X. Since 2008, Global X ETFs has been committed to empowering investors with unexplored, intelligent solutions. Global X specializes in exchange-traded funds that offer exposure to the artificial intelligence ecosystem, including themes like data centers, robotics, semiconductors, and cloud computing. To learn more about Global X's entire suite of ETFs, from covered calls, fixed income, emerging markets, and more, visit globalxetfs.com.
Hey, it's me, the Quenchies. I'm that late afternoon craving you just can't shake. Wait, what's that? Welch's Grape Aid? No! Made with real fruit and no added sugar, nothing answers the call of the Quenchies like Grape Aid. Got the Quenchies? Grab a Grape Aid in your juice aisle.
Now, back to the show. So, we've walked through the 4 steps of the brand blueprint, being goddess archetype based. Say you were explaining this to someone and they said, I don't get it. Is there an accessible example that you find yourself pointing to a lot that really brings this framework to life?
Yes. So let's talk about a particular goddess. Let's talk about Diana. Diana is, in myth, the goddess of the wilderness. She is the huntress. This is a energetic force, an archetype that represents bravery, independence, self-reliance. This goddess is about freedom and resilience and taking initiative. So she's very linked to exploration. And so if we know that we want our archetype to be Diana the Free, the goddess of the wilderness, then that tells us a lot about the meaning of our brand. And one of the examples that we use in the book of a Diana brand is the North Face. And really it's a Diana Mars. We bring in the gods as well. It's a Diana Mars hybrid brand. But the North Face is a brand that's all about exploration and adventure. And, we interview Sophie Bambuck, the CMO of the North Face, and she talks about in the book the core DNA of the North Face being pushing your limits and trying to see what's next and testing yourself as a human being. Now, that may be for some people rock climbing, Half Dome in Yosemite, and certainly there are people who wear the North Face and use North Face products in that setting. But as Sophie points out in the book, also just trying to get to the subway in a New York winter is an exploration in and of itself, and you can wear a North Face to get there. But I think what Sophie mentioned in our discussion, I think gets to the heart of the Diana brand, is the ethos of exploration and the ethos of adventure has been relevant to humans forever, I think, and it will continue to be. So when we attach our brand to a timeless character, to a timeless archetype that embodies something like exploration and testing one's limits, we are resting on very good territory. It's something that can endure. And we want to hit on something that can endure and that is going to be meaningful to humanity through time if we want to stand the test of time as a brand. And I think the North Face is a great example of a brand that has done that. They are as relevant now as they were at inception. Is that helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. No, great example of both one of the archetypes and a brand that's really bringing that to life, but then also can be maybe a springboard and an intermediary for someone that says, okay, so if North Face is using it like this, then I might, or we might use it like that.
Exactly. And I love to look for mentor brands in any category that share an essential ethos that I think my brand shares. So for example, if I want to create a brand that's all about freedom, it's really fun to look at freedom brands. So I think we don't want to get too caught up in our category. I think sometimes we have blinders on and we only look at our category. So if like we're making jeans, we just look at other jeans companies. Really, if you can hook into your archetype, so if you're about the wilderness and exploration, whether you're out in the wilderness or you're in the wilderness of unconventionality, I mean that metaphorically, look at other brands that play in that space for inspiration. There's a tremendous amount of inspiration out in the world from what other brands are doing that have nothing to do with your category, but everything to do with the ethos and archetype that you're working with.
That is such a great point, and one I find myself making a lot, especially when you are working with B2B, education, government. Sometimes these industries that think, we're very different. There's no possible frame of reference exists elsewhere. But what you're talking about, archetypes, goddesses, this is something that could potentially go beyond that and is important to really kind of see those ideas that, like you said, to not end up with your blinders on, because in the end you miss out.
Totally. I think there's inspiration everywhere, and that's the fun of life. So I say eyes open.
So you talked about inspiration everywhere, eyes open. The book also has several, it's a very actionable book. So what I wanted to kind of see if you would share some of the types of exercises folks can expect to find in the book that will not only leave them with a good read, but with a kind of an architecture, a framework that they can then go apply as well.
Yes. So, for example, when we're in the book, we walk through finding your archetype. And so we have several exercises to do that. So I always like to start with the natural goddess for you. And that means the category tends to be dominated by a certain archetype. So if you're in the beauty category, Venus is your natural goddess. If you're in the education space, the natural goddess for you will be Athena, the goddess of wisdom. If you're in the cooking space, Demeter, the mother goddess, would be a natural archetype for you. So why I like to start with the natural is that's a mindset your customer is probably in that space. And so that's a good place to start, because you can have a very compelling beauty brand in the Venus goddess territory. So we like to look there first. Then another place I like to look is who is most inspiring to you. So as I mentioned, I think inspiration is everything, especially with branding today, because this is the age of super content, as the brand strategist Anna Angelique says. There's so much content that we've got to be creating in order to create whole worlds for our brand. So we need to be constantly inspired. So you want to pick an archetype who is giving you all kinds of ideas and is a well of new content, new collaborations, new limited edition flavors. So I always look for someone who is a springboard to new ideas for you. And then we've got to find a goddess or an archetype who your customers are going to be interested in connecting with. So I call that looking for your match. So it's kind of like we're doing a little bit of a dating service. So we've got the goddess, and then we've got your customer, and do they get along? Does your customer want to hang out with this goddess? So we do an exercise around finding the match. Because if we're not connecting with our customers, if we're not compelling to them, we've got to go back to the drawing board. And then finally, the exercise for finding your goddess that I like to go into next is the unexpected goddess. So that's about the opposite of the natural. The unexpected is the zag. It's the archetype who throws a wrench into everything. Super unconventional, very different, likely to get attention. An example of an archetype zag that most people are familiar with is Deathwater. I consider the archetype for Deathwater as a brand to be Hades, the mystery. This is the god of the underworld. In our system, the match to Hades is Queen Persephone, the queen of the underworld. But who would have thought that you would bring death to water? Because water is life. The whole category has been about healing and electrolytes and Fiji. It's Venus. It's paradise. So somebody rolls in with a crazy cartoon character that's like Gotham City, and it feels like a beer and it's water. That's very unconventional. That's interesting. So we have an exercise to see if there's an unexpected archetype who could really bring something counterintuitive but brilliant to the market. So that's the final exercise we do to get to the goddess for you. And once you know your goddess or you know your archetype, that archetype informs those other pieces I mentioned earlier, the heart, the gift, the style. And then we go through exercises for each of those.
Well, I, again, love this framework, and I think it is an amazing way to not only look at and consider brands, but to really, like you say in the subtitle of the book, develop a blueprint that you can use moving forward throughout the brand experience that you're creating. Well, the approach has made me smile, as well as so many of the references that you've made. I wonder, Jane, if you could share a brand that has made you smile recently.
Okay, so at my most hippest coffee shop in my neighborhood, the baristas have been wearing these star-shaped pimple patches on their face. And I know that there's a pimple under there, but it makes me so happy that this brand had the insight to turn something that's usually embarrassing into a moment of joy. And I mean, that's the power of branding. If you can take a pimple and make it cool and awesome, I mean, that's magic right there. So Starface is a brand that is really making me smile right now.
I love it. And my daughter wears those as well. And in thinking about this in a branding context, I mean, it's maybe a bit of a trite saying, but it's like they made a bug into a feature there, and really having a lot of fun with that as well. Jane, where can folks go to learn more about who you are and what you do?
goddessoffice.com. If you go to goddessoffice.com, you'll find me. We have a quiz to discover your own archetypal goddess at work. It's really fun and insightful. And then you'll also find a button on the site to our Substack, where we're offering inspiration for working with purpose and style week by week. And I would love to connect with you.
Awesome. Well, we will link up to all of that in our show notes, which folks can find at onbrandpodcast.com. Jane McCarthy, thanks for being on brand with us.
Thank you, Nick.
On Brand is part of the Marketing Podcast Network. If you like what you're hearing, if we've made you smile, you can always listen free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform may be. And please take a moment and rate and review the podcast to help others find the show. Until next week, I'm Nick Westergaard, and I'll see you on the internet.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Hennika Watkins-Porter hosts The Entrepreneurial You, empowering entrepreneurs with insights on leadership, business, and success. Hennika, tell listeners what to expect from your show.
So we provide innovative business strategies and practical solutions to common entrepreneurial challenges.
And where can people subscribe?
Find us at hennikawatkinsporter.com, as well as the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcasts.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.